Imagine you're on a plane to Tokyo Disneyland with your family and friends during your school holidays. Suddenly, your plane crashes on a remote and you are the only survivor. How would you feel? But most importantly, what would you do? A very good afternoon to my beloved teacher Ratna, fellow friends and distinguished parents. My name is Hidan Rameshwan and I'm 11 years old this year, and today I would like to share my experience of being stranded on a remote island for 1 month and my survival plan, which helped me tremendously. So it all started when I was on a flight to Tokyo Disneyland with my family and friends during my school holidays. Suddenly, the weather turned bad and the plane crashed on a remote island called Nereus Island near Fuchu, Japan. Sadly, nobody survived the plane crash except me. Fortunately, before the radio communication broke down, I managed to send a message and got a reply that said, "You're too far, we can only save you after 1 month." Before the radio communication broke down, I managed to track the number, which came all the way back from South Korea, about 942 kilometers away from Japan. So, I started gathering some useful information about Nereus Island. It was 1069 kilometers away from land. It was home to wild creatures, rivers, palm trees and coconut trees, and I was the only living human being on this island. After gathering all these useful items and useful information, I began on initiating my survival plan. First things first, I found and gathered as many items as I could find, and what I found: an empty wine bottle, a pair of loop earrings, some dead monkeys, some dead crabs, a cigarette lighter, a piece of fuselage, a camera cable, a thick rope, an empty shoebox, a can of bug spray, and a survival kit. Now, once I found and collected all these useful items and materials, I began on working on the next step of my plan, which was to source food and water. For food, I began cooking some of the dead crabs I found, using a fire I built with wood, charcoal and fire from the cigarette lighter. I then placed it into the empty shoebox on top of some leaves and herbs to preserve it for the next few days so I won't die out of starvation. For water, I used the most efficient way to desalinate salt water, which was distillation. I began collecting the salty seawater into the empty wine bottle and boiling it over the fire I built earlier. I then collected the liquid from the condensation, which provided me a fresh, saltless water for me to drink. Just so I had another drink to quench my thirst, I collected some coconuts from coconut trees using the camera cable and thick rope, just so I didn't climb up so much. Now that I have spoken about how I sourced food and water, the next I began building one out of strong sticks, bamboo, palm fronds, wood and vines. I then hung up dead monkeys on top of some palm trees to scare and ward off any wild animals. I also sprayed some bug spray around my shelter to protect against poisonous insects from entering my shelter. For safety, I built a gate out of strong, sharp, chiseled wood and set booby traps near my shelter to protect against animals. I also made weapons out of stone and wood, such as a sword, a spear and a knife. Now, let me tell you how I stayed warm on cold nights for an entire month. I made sure to stock up on wood and charcoal because I knew it was necessary to only make fires, such as when cooking food or during cold nights. Now, surviving on an island is no easy task, and for us to be able to do so, we need some life skills. I specifically needed 2 life skills for this incident, and believe me, I learned a lesson or two learning these life skills. The 2 life skills were rope craft and hunting. Now, although this is a remote island, there are still a few rules and regulations that I needed to obey, which were no littering, no using chemicalized products, and no experimenting on animals. Now, once I came back home, I immediately wrote a guide on how to survive on an island, so people who would later face the same problems as me would know how to deal with it. The second thing I did was share my experience around so that it got well known. And the third and final thing I did was reflect on my actions and remember my hardship and how much I struggled. This is the end of my speech. I would now like to welcome any questions from the audience about my presentation. I'm sorry. Yes, sir?
So how you were rescued?
I was rescued by a ship. I wrote a SOS sign on the sand, and then when the ship came by, it saw the sign and brought me into their ship. I was later then rescued 1 week after I was stranded on a remote island. Any more questions? Yes, sir. I felt very lonely as my family and friends has been long gone, and I was the only person on the island. I have not been near to human society for 1 month. So yes, sir, I felt very lonely. Any more questions? Okay, if that is all, I would like to end my speech here. Remember, there is no harm in hoping for the best as long as you prepare for the worst. Thank you very much.